Hi, and welcome to the closing night of the SCAD Savannah Film Festival. I am so pleased to have Eli Garay and Aldous Hodge here from an amazing film, One Night in Miami. One single night in 1964, where four of the most prominent Americans of their generation happened to be together. Nobody knows exactly what happened. We know it did happen, but this movie imagines a pretty exciting conversation over the course of many hours. Excuse me, folks. Over the course of many hours. It's Halloween. Okay, I'm a little hoarse. And these two brilliant actors really personify two of the most unique individuals of the 20th century. My goodness. I would like to talk a little bit about how you both came to personify these two icons. And I'd start with you, Aldous. There is something extraordinary about Kent Powers' play, but what's really interesting is you get to take the play out of the four walls of the motel room. And there's a scene at the very beginning of this movie, which I think sort of explains a lot about Jim Brown, and that's the scene on St. Simon's Island. And I want you to talk a little bit about that, because that's all dialogue in the original play.
That was taken from a real account that Kemp had read about an experience that Mr. Jim Brown actually had. So he put it in there because for many of us, I myself even, we've experienced that very same thing. Dealing with somebody who thinks they have a degree of respect for you when in fact they don't. And now you have to figure out, like, I can't change this person's mind. I can only change how I deal with or respond to this person. So let me take the power in the situation and not be reactive, right? Let me figure out who I am in this moment. It's a mentally and emotionally taxing experience, but it's a very teachable experience. And I love that we have that moment in the film just because, like I said, it's very real for a lot of us. It's very real for a lot of us today. And the power of this film, the power of what Kemp was able to do with the storytelling was push a lot of cumulative education and experience out there for everybody to understand what really is going on, understand what the conversation is that needs to be had, and we get to see that amongst these four men. So when it came to, Mr. Brown and how he handled that, and furthermore, going into how he handled other situations and getting into, establishing the Black Economic Union, understanding economic power for himself, for his culture, for his community, all of those events added up to those decisions and those choices. He didn't waste those experiences. You know what I mean? He used them and understood how to use them and empower himself in order to empower his community with those choices and those experiences. That's what I love about it.
It's an extraordinary scene, and I think Kemp has said what makes it so painful is that the person doing the painful thing, the racism is so entirely thoughtless that it is the definition of just living in aggression when you don't even realize something that banal, that he's completely oblivious to the offense he's caused.
Well, a lot of that is
go ahead.
I was saying a lot of that is based off of a lack of cultural education and understanding and experience, right? He has not experienced or given himself the chance to see Black culture as human beings. So he feels perfectly fine and vindicated for his choices and how he thinks of us. But again, that's what we deal with a lot today. And it's on us to not validate those people's mindset or how they treat us. It's on us to know who we are and continue to walk in our glory and our power and not allow this negative to define us. We have to define ourselves. And again, I think that's what Mr. Brown did in that moment.
Well, Eli, you play sort of the polar opposite of Jim Brown in this movie. And I think what's incredible is what Aldous has to do is has to play a lot with a little in terms of how much he's holding in. But Cassius Clay, soon to be Muhammad Ali, is this incredibly voluble character. And you're from the South. The Southern Maritimes Nova Scotia.
Canada.
And
Yeah.
one of the things that I found really interesting about how someone from the Maritimes who has, obviously you have different cadence. It's not so much about Ali's words, it's about what's underneath them, that you seem to have worked very hard to get the sort of cadence of what somebody from Louisville who has his background would have, more than I think a lot of people who portray Muhammad Ali. They get caught up in his words and his poetry because he was incredibly poetic, but there's something deeper that you're working with. I wanted you to talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah, well, I mean, pretty early on in my preparation process, I realized that I didn't want to just have a kind of a mocking or a impersonation style when I was doing him, and I think that's the trap you can fall into because he has such a rhythmic way of speaking. I found that what I wanted to do was really just capture, the essence of where he was coming from and how that influenced the things that he was saying and the way that he was thinking. And I think that started with, being from the South, particularly from Louisville, Kentucky, and being a black man. And so I went out and found a dialect coach, Trey Cotton, just had a piece up in the New York Times. Fantastic dialect coach. Worked with, me, Leslie, all of us to some degree, but, a lot with me and Leslie as well. And he's from North Carolina, and he's a trained dialect coach, and he's really able to kind of talk to me a lot about just experiences. Just even things as simple as the heat in the South and how that affects how loose your jaw is and how much more you take your time when you're saying things and you're not in a rush because you always say, it's too hot, So I'd be like, taking in those types of things that I, being from Canada, wouldn't understand. Now there is a connection historically because being a black Nova Scotian, originally we came through the Underground Railroad.
Absolutely. We should tell people that Halifax has a long tradition and an incredible history, connection to Black history.
Exactly.
I would advise everybody to go check it out.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's, so that connection and that understanding, and it's funny you said I'm from the South in the Maritimes because we often say that Nova Scotia is like the South of Canada in terms of just there's a lot of hospitality, there's a lot of, culture, but there's also a lot of conflict between Black and white races because of that historical history of Black Underground Railroad, as well as the Maroons and the Black Loyalists. So there's a lot of similarities in terms of the cultural history, but in terms of just the speaking voice, I really wanted to just absorb the idea of being from where he was from and how that influenced everything else after that and how he delivered his message.
For the two of you, I'm wondering, I know Leslie had a little hesitation about Sam Cooke, but the two of you were, when you saw this script and you were reading for these parts, were you at all hesitant about, taking on such big characters, big, living legends, in the case of Jim Brown, still alive.
Right.
In the case of Ali, one of the most recorded, documented figures of the 20th century. I'm wondering what went through your head when you're like, okay, I'm going to play somebody of that stature.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't really, I wouldn't say I was nervous because I'd already been preparing to play him. I'd auditioned originally for a film that I didn't get, but I got very close to. Kingsley ended up booking it, which some people have already heard. He ended up getting it, and he ended up playing Michael Mexican art film, so it's kind of serendipity there. But and then when I didn't get that, I decided I was going to keep preparing because I thought there'd be another opportunity to play him because people often told me I resembled him or that I made, I favored him in some way. So I thought, this might come up again. It's, one of the most famous people in history. So I just started playing it, and then I had an opportunity to do a play. So I was going to do a play, Fetch Clay, Make Man, and then this opportunity came. So I'd already kind of been preparing, been building the character. Obviously, at that point, I dove in even deeper because I knew that this was going to be seen by a lot more people and a lot more eyes. But it was something that I was excited to do. I felt like I'd been working for a long time. I will say that it's easy to be an armchair quarterback when you're watching other people's performances. You know, like you watch someone play somebody great, and as an actor, I think we all kind of sit back and we go, "Oh, I think he could have done this different, or he could have done that different, or oh yeah, that was good, but this was not believable." But when you realize you're going to be taking that on, it changes your perspective, and you're like, all that stuff that I was thinking about other people when I saw them doing it. Now I got to think, okay, people are going to be watching me, and I got to, and it's going to be on me to make sure that I honor this man's legacy and I honor all that people love about him to the best of my ability. So I'd say that was probably the most eye-opening thing. Is like, it's really easy to sit back and look at someone else and say, oh, they did this and they did that, and I could have done this. But then when you actually get the opportunity, it's a lot more work and sacrifice that goes into even doing a good job when you're taking on something that great. So I hope I honored his legacy and my performance the best I could.
Yeah, for me, I did have a bit of apprehension at first because I had to figure out if I really could, honor this man. This is his life. This is his contribution, and if I'm going to be out here doing it, I got to make sure I can actually do it, So it took me a little bit to come around to figuring out if I felt like I had the chops to really go at it. And then got down to a point where my team was like, look, bruh, so Regina is calling and she want to see you audition. And I was like, you know what? I'm about to audition. I ain't finna tell Regina no, but I think that's the responsibility that we carry as artists and performers is not to jump at everything. It's like, if I'm going to do something, will I do it service? And of course, Mr. Brown still is here. If he sees this, I would hope that he's proud of how I portrayed him and how I depicted him, as a human being, as an honest person and not as a caricature, and that is that's where some of the, if there's any pressure at all in terms of a biopic playing someone real, that is the pressure that comes, is can I play a full, real, actualized human being instead of an idea of the human being or sort of a depiction of what we think this person is. I want you to see a man, and we all worked very hard at it, and pardon my bias, but I feel like we all hit the target. I got to big up my brothers. You know what I'm saying? We, I feel like we did all right. You know what I mean? But yeah, playing Mr. Brown, it took some thought, because this was a story that was very important. It's a story that has a very important message, and you want to make sure you doing your work. You can do the work.
It's interesting, obviously, because Jim Brown has such an intensity about him. He has always been, as I said, sort of as two friends, they couldn't be more different in their public personas. Jim Brown was always intense to the point of don't, cross him. And Ali was a great performer. What I find interesting in your scenes, Aldous, especially the scenes where you're just looking in the mirror, or you're just you're processing what other people are saying, and then there's that amazing scene with Kingsley where you get to imagine a conversation. I don't think, and it's too bad Kingsley's not here. There has never been a portrayal, just not. I don't want to take anything away. There've been some great portrayals of Malcolm X, but where he is just hanging out with his friends, where he's just human, and he's being, you have this great scene where you kind of take him to task a little bit, and a little bit different from the way it was played on stage, where you kind of psychoanalyze him. Yeah. Was that an interesting scene to play with Kingsley, that whole exchange about where his activism comes from?
Yeah, it was a beautiful scene. We loved shooting that scene because we were able to nuance so many different choices, because it spoke so loudly to the purpose. Like every single character has a moment with another character where they're adding to the conversation to push it forward, right? And in that scene, Jim gets to let Malcolm know, yeah, I see where you're at, but have you considered this? Have you considered this world, you know? And I love the fact that it's a moment of brotherhood, even though it starts off with sort of a challenge of opinion. It's not contentious. They actually come together, and we get to see these two brothers understand how to talk to one another. Again, an educational, teachable moment for me. And I gotta bigs up Kingsley, because look, my man went to work. You know what I'm saying? As far as the way we get to see Malcolm, it's a hell of a task, because we get to see the human being. As you said, we get to see a different side of him. You know, in certain depictions of history, we're given this, you know, more of an aggressive image, you know, where I was raised with more of an aggressive image of this man, and not realizing that his heart is in what he does, you know, and he's a human being. He loves, he laughs, he has somebody to protect. He's got family. He does it for a purpose, for a reason. We get to see a whole different human being in this performance, and Kingsley handled his business. You know what I'm saying? So I got to big up Kingsley, and at the same time, got to big up Leslie, you know what I'm saying? Because he handled his business. We have never seen or been able to understand Sam Cooke in this way. And I grew up a Sam Cooke fan, so just big love to the brothers. But as far as the conversation, it really does come down to the way Kemp composed the conversation. I think he did a brilliant job in figuring out how to get out the message in the most comprehensive way, in the most really emotionally evocative way, you know? It's one of my favorite scenes I've ever shot.
Far at it. All four characters are at a huge crossroads in their lives. Yeah. And he's managed to capture also America is at a crossroads in 1964, right?
Yeah.
And these lives intersect. And, you know, two of those men are not going to live out the decade. They're going to die tragically. But one of the things that's amazing, I think, is having the Ali Liston fight at the middle of it, the Cassius Clay Liston fight. You get with your performance, Eli, the sweetness of Cassius Clay, that he was he has a huge heart that comes through your performance. Mm-hmm. And he is incredibly thoughtful, and he was incredibly bright. But he was making a decision that he knew was going to forever change the way he was perceived in public, by making public his conversion, which would then lead to his being a conscientious objector. And people forget that chapter in Muhammad Ali's life. They think of Muhammad Ali as this lovable character from later in his career, but he went through an enormous amount of public attacks, and doing what he did took a lot of courage. Talk a little bit about your research into where he was when he made that decision.
Well, I mean, I think the thing about him that's the most impressive to me is that he was really a prodigy. You know, he was on TV from the time he was like 12 years old fighting. He never lost an amateur fight. He won a gold medal when I think he was about 16 or 17 in Rome. And then, and so he was so intentional about every aspect, even from finding Angelo, his trainer. It was, he went and called him and said, if you don't represent me, you're not going to, you're representing all these bums, and I'm the greatest fighter that there is, and you're going to represent me. Like, he was very calculated and saw his way out and planned and built this character based on Gorgeous George that was, that he knew would build this animosity, and that would be a selling point because his fighting style wasn't really a style of like, what they liked back then, which were these, brutes who slugged it out, and he had a totally different fighting style. So he had to find a way to get people to want to pay to see his fights, and so everything he did was very calculated. He had already been attending mosques for several years before he made this statement. And there's actually interviews of him, if you go back and listen, where people come in and ask him if he prays to God, and he doesn't say he's practicing Islam, but at that time historically he was, and he'll say very cryptic messages as, I talk to God every day, and I pray every day, and I pray several times a day, and I'll go to temple or I'll go to church. He was very intelligent at that age to be that aware of how every step mattered to get to where he was trying to go, and to play it perfectly. It's just mind-boggling how he was really, as good of a fighter as he was that intelligent. And I think that's what blew everybody away. The poems and the promotion and the just the mind, the intellect, the ability to understand social issues. I think it was unheard of to see someone who was that attractive physically, that talented in a boxing ring, and that smart, all equally on the same level. Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone has ever seen anything like it before or since. So yeah, I think it. Yeah, those. I was very. And I'm sorry, I might have lost track of the question, but I was. I think I was just blown away by all the elements of who he was, and to talk to the sweetness. I think he was just a very passionate and compassionate person. He had a real heart for humanity, obviously, and I just wanted to make sure that. But he also had all these agendas that were simultaneously running alongside of each other that he felt that he needed to accomplish. And so I think I was just trying to capture some glimpse of that in my interactions, of knowing who I'm talking to, when I was talking to them, and what that meant for the big picture.
You do get snippets of two different Alis there. The guy that he is Cassius Clay, and sort of flashes of who he's going to become, which is a global superstar. And as you say, one who totally who's not afraid for people not to like him. And I think both Jim Brown and Ali, if you think about who they were as athletes, they were transcendent athletes of their generation. They're really, you could talk about Jackie Robinson, but there weren't a lot of people who were the first in a lot of ways. And so their dialogue really centers around what it means to be the first. And it seems to me from your performances and from what you've learned about them, that they understood that they understood that they had they were carrying something bigger than just celebrity.
Yeah. I mean, where we find these men, I think what's really interesting about the perspective here is that they are all in their own right, bigger, larger than life, right? To their communities, to the time in which they were living. But at the same, in that very same breath, they are also dealing with the things that every other Black person in America is dealing with, and they realize they can't escape it. So now what do? How do we use what we have to hopefully push for something better? And I think that was really fantastic to sort of exhibit how they came to that, and the fact that they thought about it and they discussed it, and they were really motivated to do something with what they had. They understood they had platforms that were very rare because of who they are. They're all outliers, but they all used it for something greater than themselves.
The thing we do know about this is that this night was that they all did consciously know that when they've been quoted about it, that they knew they had to be a force, that they had to lift people up and change society. Of the things that you learned about your characters, what was the most difficult thing to sort of master about them that you wanted to convey?
The boxing.
Boxing.
Trying to gain 20 pounds and move quicker than a lightweight. That was definitely, golly. It's amazing because you think you know how fast he is until you realize what it's like in person. Because a lot of times I would, we had choreography, and I would just, it felt to me like I got missed by this much, and it felt like I was moving so quick, and we watch it back on camera, and like I'm moving like I'm in molasses. Like
Right.
it looks so slow, and the guy's like this far from, And so when you watch him, and you see how close guys would miss him by this much. No choreography. These are people really trying to hit him, and they just can't hit him. Professionals, and he's lightning quick. I can't even imagine how fast it must have looked like in person, because it's just, if it looks that fast on camera, it's at least 20 times faster in real life. He was just and to walk around, at 220 pounds, 230 pounds, and move that quickly. I mean, at that age, he was maybe 220 pounds. Never a heavyweight before or since that could do that. And it's just a phenomenal specimen of athleticism. Just unbelievable. That's the hardest thing, for sure.
You do capture how he made people run out of gas. That was his thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
What about you, Aldous?
I think for me, it was probably his cadence, because when I watched interviews of him back in the day, it's a different time, it's a different era. They had this cool thing happening, man. Like, there was a patience to how he spoke, and it's almost as though he was thinking about absolutely everything. And of course he was, but really taking a moment to think about what he was saying before he said it. You can kind of hear him think as he spoke. He was very calculated with his words, and at the same time wasn't rushed, was never rushed for anything. He just had this kind of cool, smooth, vibe about him. But as you said before, there was an energy to him that lets you know he wasn't a game. You know what I'm saying? I'm Jim Brown, you know what I mean? And for me, catching the cadence was a part of catching his essence, a part of catching his persona, his charisma, his soul. And that was one of the more important things for me to make sure that I got right, because I didn't want him to sound, as I mentioned before, like a caricature of himself.
Right.
I wanted him to sound like a real human being. And I kept talking to Regina about it, like, hey, do I sound all right? Am I cool? She's like, you good. Don't worry about it. Just do your thing. I'm like, all right, cool. But that was, it was quite difficult. But when I heard it back, I was like, all right, man, I might have done my thing. It was all right. It's all right. I can live with that.
I think you capture Brown's intention. I mean, he's somebody that people don't realize now. I think it was much more evident at the time, but he put a lot of his energy into business development and into. He was not as voluble as Ali, but he did an incredible amount of work in the Black community and in the broader culture to advance.
He did a lot behind the scenes for the athletes as well.
Yeah. So I want to ask about Regina and working with her. She couldn't be here tonight, but she is obviously the creative force that helped bring you all together. What was it like working it together? And did you guys come together as a group of 5 and talk about how scenes would play out? How did you prepare with her, and how did she direct you as a consummate actor herself?
Sure. You want me to start?
Yeah, you can start. Because he had the job first, so you were the first one cast, so you could kind of talk from the beginning.
So all I will say is Queen King. That's what I call her. She is a maverick and a savant. Love her to death, man. She came. The things that I really picked up from her. First of all, she had a very vivid vision for what this project was and what it was going to mean. Absolute perfect person to make this thing happen. But she brought so much patience and humility to set, which I think are 2 of her superpowers amongst many, because she allowed us to figure it out and find it. She allowed us to develop out the relationships of these 4 men amongst the 4 of us as individuals and bring that to set. It was a teamwork type of deal. Sometimes we would all, get together, they would call cut, all right, end of the day, and all 5 of us are sitting back, taking personal time. We off the clock now, but we sitting there taking personal time to go over rehearsals and talk about scene and story for the next day and the next week. You know what I mean? But she really held us down. She brought it all together, and she was just so smart about her choices and her vision. I mean, how do you take a play, right, and give it such a dynamic visual aesthetic that it can turn into not just a movie, but a film, an actual piece of work, an art form. Like the words were already there. Kemp did his thing, a magician with the pen. But when it comes to the visual, how do you see that? And she kept us on track every step of the way. And if ever we did have doubts about what we were going through or what we were doing, she gave us that confidence. And I'll work for her any day. If she needs me to come do background or something, I'm here. But I think, and I'll say this until people get tired of hearing me say it, this is, she came to this project as a seasoned director. People will be impressed. I think they're going to be surprised. I don't think they, look, it's no surprise to me because she bad. The girl bad, you know what I'm saying? But I can't wait to see how people receive this work. And then I can't wait to see what she directs next, because she truly made this thing. I think she elevated, however it started, she took it and elevated it, 100-fold. She did an amazing job with this. I'm really impressed with her as a person, as a director, and as a leader.
Yeah. I mean, I second everything that you said. From the very beginning, every element of it, she just is very aware and intentional. Like he said, this is a play, but it's not just a play. It was a play that takes place in one room.
Yeah.
So to have a play that the whole thing takes place in one room and turn that into a film and make it dynamic and have all these different elements and feel like you're going on a journey when you're really just in one spot for most of the film. It takes a real understanding of what it is that you're trying to accomplish and a real comprehensive view of where it is you're trying to go every step of the way. I've said it before. I think she's going to be remembered more for her directing by the time she's done than her acting, and she's an Oscar-winning actress, and so that's saying a lot. I think she's going to be like a Clint Eastwood or one of these actors who became directors and now Ron Howard, and they're remembered more for their acting. But like Aldous said, I'm eager to see what she does next. But her ability to work with crew, to pick crew, to work on the post, because a lot of the film, a lot of what makes the film so beautiful is the post work. The sounds that she added in the arenas. We didn't have, just so there was no arena filled with 100,000 people.
Nah.
You know what I mean? That's her vision, to be able to create that in post and to be able to color. When you're in the South, to feel the different color treatments on the film or digital. But on the movie, the film in that sense, the different color treatments that she used to capture that essence and to capture that feeling, of being in the South, in the summer, in the heat, and then to use different things when you're in the arena with Sam, and when you're in the Copacabana, and when you're in the hotel room, when you're in the white neighborhood to the black neighborhood, and extras casting. And there's one scene that I love with Sam when he's at the arena and it's zooming in on Malcolm in the back, and there's a background performer right behind Malcolm's shoulder that steals the scene. I mean, the guy is dancing,
tall guy with the bow tie. Yeah.
Yes, and he's just getting into it, and it's
he's really good.
Yeah, and it's like you think that this guy but again, it was like picking every detail is captured. The camera angles, the lighting. I mean, I could go on and on. So yes, she's phenomenal. Even from the audition process, just me and Aldous, I read with him because, like I said, he was cast first, and it was just the whole process. It was excellence. It was really, really amazing.
If I can piggyback on just that. Oh, go ahead, brother.
I know I was going to say, I'm being told we should wrap this up to your lives. I want to say something there's more than 400 people watching this, and I know they're going to be inspired as students to follow in your footsteps. So thank you for your time. Also, I want to say what is so wonderful about this film is that it actually captures a conversation that we don't get to hear as a broader culture. And the naturalness of that, and to see inside these men's lives and the grace that they had to live. They lived under enormous pressure. And you just can't even today, you can't even imagine the pressure that they dealt with such grace, which you bring to the screen. So we have to wrap it, but I want to thank you both very much. I know you've done a lot of virtual conversations. Hopefully you'll get to do some in person, but thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank everybody who joined us tonight. Appreciate y'all.
God bless everybody. Have a good night. Thank you.